Hey, this is Kevin from Star Wars Action News, and this is a review of The Force Unleashed for the iPhone. While challenging and somewhat entertaining, fell short in consistency and replayability compared to other ports of the game. One of the things I noticed immediately with the iPhone version of the game is that it's on rails. You do not control the movements of the secret apprentice Starkiller, who is the main character of the game. A good example of this would be like riding a roller coaster, where you just ride through where the rails take you. However, you do have full control over his interactions with the Force and how he uses it to defeat enemies and solve problems. Additionally, on the iPhone version of the game, the secret apprentice is the only character you control throughout the entire game, which is a little different than most of the console versions of the game, where you actually start as a different but familiar character. The game for the iPhone also reinvents the interactivity of the actual gameplay by leveraging the touch controls of the iPhone and providing highlighted blue neon symbols, which you need to repeat as a gesture with your finger to perform an offensive move. There are also defensive signals that you need to replicate with your finger by gesturing in a diagonal stroke towards a particular section depending on what quadrant of the red circle is being depicted. Upon first glance at the overall user interface of the game, including the navigation, main content areas, and even the levels of the game itself, I noticed that the scenery and artwork are very lush and beautiful, which takes full advantage of the high-resolution screen and Cocoa Touch functionality of the iPhone. There are also written instructions about the gameplay and control explanations, in addition to the extensive training modules that are presented as sort of mini-games or levels throughout the game as you unlock new Force powers. I found both the written instructions and the training levels to be very helpful in their own ways. Also, the game's integration with the iPhone's built-in accelerometer keeps up on the fly when you turn the device from portrait mode to landscape mode at any point during the game. As the game progresses and you hit certain milestones, you gain additional powers that can be used in future levels. At the beginning of the game, you start out with Force Grip, but then you soon discover you can get access to Force Pull, Push, Lightning, Drain, Shield, and Jedi Mind Trick as you progress through the different levels of the game. I felt that this was clearly the most analogous feature of the iPhone version of the game, based on the console version of the game. All the same moves that are on the iPhone version are pretty much in the console version, and there are no exclusive or specific moves to the iPhone to capitalize further on its unique interface. Here you have one path and one path only, which in my opinion takes the whole on-the-rails concept a bit too far. It's fair to say without giving anything away that the core element of the Secret Apprentice's story, like any Star Wars character who has the power of the Force, is the choice between good and bad or the light and dark sides of the Force, and we're robbed of these possible outcomes on the iPhone version of the game. The Force Unleashed for the iPhone only has 6 levels and you play 3 environments twice. I felt this was actually a clever way to reuse a lot of the same background art, which is just stunning on about every platform including this one. This game comes in at a whopping 20.2 megabytes, and it is impressive how the development team at Universamo packed it in. Of course, this could be seen as a positive if you like your game speedy on a mobile device like an iPhone, or negative because you can pretty much beat the game in under 2 hours of play. Then what? Well, there is a survival mode which allows you to play different enemies and environments, which is actually nothing like the Wii's duel mode that allows you to pick from a couple dozen characters and environments from the Star Wars saga and fight each other. But here, it's only within the existing levels and characters presented in this version of the game. The Chapters mode is basically the TiVo version of the game, and simply allows you to jump directly to one of the 6 levels you already beat. I felt that the chapter feature was somewhat pointless unless you want to let someone else play the game on your phone and they want to skip ahead. Unfortunately, there are other areas lacking in this version of the game. The MIDI version of the score is a bit lame and seems extremely weird to not use the actual music on an iPhone, which is essentially an iPod with a phone in it. Now I realize the development team was aiming for the smallest possible footprint here, but MP3s can't be that much bigger than MIDI files. And even if you only use 6 or 7 of the 13 songs from the score, it probably would be an additional 15 megabytes or so. I also realized audio dialogue would eat up a huge amount of storage real estate, but the scrolling text was a little melodramatic for my taste, and it felt a little too Ninja Gaiden-like from the old NES days. Now those were cutscenes! The plot holes that are created in the overall story of the iPhone version of the game are vast and really eat at the underlying reason why you're playing the game in the first place, to see what happens next. Now I suppose this is somewhat driven by the size and length of the overall game, since it's pretty hard to cover this extensive story in 6 chapters, where the other versions of the game are doing that in approximately double that amount. That's a lot of content you're missing, which seems unreasonable just because you're on a mobile platform. The iconic opening scroll is present like in pretty much every Star Wars video game to date, but the copy it uses presents a clearly different plotline than other versions of the game. I almost feel like there needs to be a part 2 to this game just for the iPhone. Compared to the Xbox version of the game, which I also played, at least half of the pivotal plot points are missing. You lose out on parts of the relationship between Starkiller and Juno, between Starkiller and Proxy, and you don't visit, and in some cases revisit, specific worlds and characters, which takes a lot away from the overall Force Unleashed journey. There is no audio dialogue, MP3 score, close-ups on the characters' faces, or full control of the character itself. However, what the game lacks in storyline and audio, it does make up in speed, smoothness, high-res graphics, which is always difficult to pull off on a mobile device, and innovative gameplay. If you can get past the fact that you can't control where Starkiller walks, or who he interacts with, you'll probably enjoy this game simply for what it can do as a mobile version of the game. It's simply hard to compare a $10 game with a $60 game from a visual and functional standpoint. but I feel that either THQ and or LucasArts missed the boat in this version of the game with creating a consistent tale, and everything to do with the content management and storytelling, something we come to expect with any Star Wars title. I'm Kevin for Star Wars Action News, and this has been a review of The Force Unleashed for the iPhone.